They say the most powerful healers are born from the deepest wounds, that the universe grants its greatest gifts to those it has broken most thoroughly. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes those gifts become chains, binding you to the very people who see you as nothing more than a disposable tool. And the cruelest irony of all, the moment you discover your worth is often the moment you realize you've already been sold. This is the story of Theira, an Omega whose curse had become a gift. It was the same morning her family decided she was finally worth something. Just not to them. Theira in the herb garden. She knelt in the herb garden behind their crumbling cottage, fingers deep in the dark soil, when the voices drifted through the broken shutters. Her mother, Valithra, spoke in hushed, urgent tones that made the shoulders tense instinctively. Every pack in the Northern Territories must send their best healer. The Alpha King is dying. Her father, Draveth, responded flatly. We have no healer, unless you count old Maya's tinctures, and she's half blind. Besides, we have Theira. The silence that followed was so complete that even the morning birds seemed to pause their songs. Theira's fingers stilled in the earth, dirt crumbling between her trembling hands. The LRA is an Omega, Draveth said finally, his voice carrying the same tone he used when discussing rotted crops or diseased livestock. Worse than that, she's touched. No wolf would claim her. No pack accepts her. She brings death to everything she touches. Exactly, Valithra recounted, and something in her voice made the blood run cold. The notice says King Theon's illness resists all traditional healing. Perhaps what he needs isn't traditional at all. Theira pressed her back against the cottage wall, her heart hammering. They were discussing her like livestock at market, weighing her value against their desperation. She thought of all the times her mother had recoiled from her touch, all the careful distances her family maintained, as if her very presence might contaminate them. The reward, Ira continued, is enough gold to rebuild our entire compound, to buy Cardan a proper mate from the southern packs, to give Lysera the dowry she deserves. Her siblings, of course, the ones with strong wolves, proper instincts, and futures that didn't involve being hidden away like a shameful secret. Theira had learned long ago that love in their family was carefully rationed, and her portion had run dry the day she tried to heal that dying bird when she was 7. The bird had lived, thrived even, but her touch had left strange marks, dark veins that pulsed with an otherworldly energy that made even seasoned warriors step back in fear. And if she fails, Draveth asked, the king's advisors won't take kindly to an Omega's touch on their alpha, especially one who's marked. Then she doesn't come back, Valithra said simply. Either way, our problem is solved. The words shouldn't have hurt. Theira had heard variations of them her entire life. But pain bloomed in her chest anyway, sharp and familiar. The cottage door slammed open, making her jump. Draveth stood in the doorway, his weathered face set in hard lines. Pack your things, he said without preamble. You leave within the hour. The royal convoy and purification. Father, I don't, Theira began, but Draveth held up one hand, careful to maintain his distance as always. The royal convoy will arrive soon. You'll go with them to the Crystal Palace. To heal the Alpha King, to try, Valithra corrected, finally meeting her daughter's eyes. King Thion has been cursed by something ancient. Every healer who's attempted to break it has either failed or been consumed by it. Draveth finished bluntly. The curse fights back. They say 3 healers are already dead and twice that number have lost their minds. A bitter laugh escaped before Theira could stop it. So, you're sending your cursed daughter to fight a curse? How fitting. You're the only thing we have that might work, Valithra said, and for a moment something flickered in her eyes. Regret, perhaps, or maybe just disappointment that this was their only option. Your affliction might be exactly what's needed. And if I refuse, Thyra's voice trembled. The temperature in the garden seemed to drop. Draveth's eyes flashed amber, his wolf rising to the surface. Even as a human, an alpha's dominance was absolute over an omega. You won't, he said simply, because despite everything, you're still pack and pack serves. The words were carved into every wolf's soul from birth. But Theira had never truly been pack, had she? She was the shadow at the edge of gatherings, the whispered warning to cubs who misbehaved, the cautionary tale of what happened when the moon goddess's gifts went wrong. What about Esmia? She asked suddenly. She practically raised me. Shouldn't she? She's the one who suggested it, Valithra cut in. And that betrayal hurt worst of all. The sound of approaching hooves ended any further discussion. The royal convoy had arrived. 6 black carriages bearing the king's seal. A howling wolf beneath a crown of thorns. Guards in midnight blue armor flanked the procession, their faces hidden behind silver masks. The lead carriage door opened, and a man emerged who made everyone in the garden instinctively bow. Not from respect, but from the sheer weight of power he radiated. This was Beta Commander Ravik, the king's second, whose reputation for ruthless efficiency was legendary. His eyes, an unsettling shade of violet, swept over the family before settling on Theira. His nostrils flared slightly, scenting her, and his lips curled in what might have been disgust. "The Omega," he said, not a question. "You're the one who carries death in her veins." Theira lifted her chin, finding courage in her anger. "I carry life, Beta Commander. It just happens to look like death to those who don't understand it." Ravik circled her slowly, like a predator studying prey. Bold words for one so lowborn. The king's curse has already claimed several who spoke with such confidence. "Then perhaps the king's curse needs someone who has nothing left to lose," she replied. Valithra hissed, but Ravik held up a hand, silencing her. "Interesting," he murmured. He produced a scroll from his coat, presenting it to Dravith. "The terms, if she succeeds, your family will be elevated to the king's personal service with all the rewards that entails. If she fails..." "We understand," Dravith said quickly, pressing his thumb to the seal without reading it. The contract glowed briefly, magically binding. Ravik turned back to Theira. "Gather your things. 1 bag only. We leave immediately." She had little to pack. 2 spare dresses, a journal of healing herbs she'd compiled herself, a carved wooden wolf her brother had made her before he'd learned to fear her. The rest of her possessions weren't really hers at all, just borrowed space in a home that had never wanted her. As she emerged with her meager bag, she found Esmia waiting by the carriage. The elderly healer's clouded eyes seemed to see straight through her. "Child," the old woman said softly, pressing something into Thyra's palm. It was a small vial filled with silvery liquid that seemed to move on its own. "When you touch him, and you will touch him, remember that sometimes to heal is to claim, and to claim is to surrender." The old magic recognizes its own. Before Theira could ask what she meant, Ravik's hand closed around her arm, guiding her firmly toward the carriage. She didn't look back at her family. There would be no tearful goodbyes, no promises to write. As the carriage pulled away, she heard her mother's voice one last time. Finally, the shame might be lifted. The words followed her into the dark interior of the carriage where Beta Commander Ravik watched her with those unsettling violet eyes, making notes in his leather journal. Through the window, the familiar landscape of her village faded, replaced by the unknown path that led to the Crystal Palace and to a fate that would transform not just her marks, but the very nature of what it meant to be Omega. Halfway there, pause and share your thoughts. What do you think Esmia's vial holds? Let's keep the journey going. Act 3. The Palace Trials, 30:00-45:00. Scene: Arrival at the Crystal Palace and Purification. The Crystal Palace rose from the mountain like a fever dream, its spires twisting into the clouds as if trying to pierce heaven itself. Theira pressed her face to the carriage window, watching the structure grow larger with each turn of the wheels. Built from white stone that seemed to pulse with inner light, the palace should have been beautiful. Instead, it radiated wrongness like a perfect smile hiding rotted teeth. "Impressive, isn't it?" Beta Commander Ravik commented from across the carriage. He'd been studying her for the entire 3-day journey, making notes in his leather journal. "They say King Theon's grandfather killed 1,000 enemies to claim this mountain. Their blood still feeds the roses in the lower gardens." Theira pulled back from the window. "Is that meant to frighten me? Merely to inform?" He snapped the journal shut. "You should understand what kind of power you're about to encounter. The Valdris line doesn't suffer fools or failures." The carriage lurched to a stop in a courtyard of black marble. Guards surrounded them immediately, their faces hidden behind those unnerving silver masks. Theira was hustled out, her bag taken before she could protest, and marched through a side entrance she suspected was reserved for servants and other undesirables. The corridors they traveled were narrow and dim, lit by crystals that cast sickly green shadows. Other servants pressed themselves against walls as they passed, averting their eyes. She caught whispers of another healer, and won't last the night following in their wake. They descended stone steps that grew colder with each level until the breath misted in the air. Finally, Ravik stopped before an iron door marked with symbols that made her skin crawl. "The purification chamber," he announced, producing an ornate key. "Every healer must be cleansed before approaching the king." "Strip." Theira stared at him. "Here. Now." The curse spreads through contamination. Everything you carry from the outside world must be destroyed. His violet eyes held no sympathy. "Your modesty is irrelevant compared to the king's survival." Two female servants appeared, elderly twins with matching scars across their throats. They held brass bowls filled with steaming liquid that smelled of bitter herbs and something metallic. Without ceremony, they began pulling at the clothes, their fingers efficient but not gentle. She stood naked in the freezing chamber, arms wrapped around herself as they poured the burning liquid over her skin. It felt like being flayed with tiny knives. The silver marks on her arms flared to life, glowing so brightly that one servant stumbled backward with a gasp. "Fascinating," Ravik murmured, making another note. "The cleansing solution contains wolf's bane. It should burn any wolf blood, even omegas. Yet your marks seem to absorb it." The servants scrubbed her raw with brushes that left her skin red and stinging, then doused her with water so cold she couldn't breathe. They cut her hair to shoulder length, burning the shorn locks in a bronze brazier. Every inch of her was examined, prodded, catalogued. When they finally allowed her to dress, it was in a simple white shift that barely reached her knees. No shoes, no undergarments, nothing that might carry outside influence. "Follow me," Ravik commanded, leading her deeper into the palace's bowels. They passed through a series of increasingly disturbing spaces. A room filled with failed healing implements, crystals cracked and blackened, herbs turned to ash, holy symbols twisted into profane shapes. Another chamber held portraits of previous healers, their faces painted with expressions of terror, dates of death inscribed below each frame. "Your predecessors," Ravik explained unnecessarily. "We keep them as a reminder of the curse's power." The hallway opened into an antechamber where a woman waited. Beautiful in a sharp way, with silver hair despite her apparent youth and eyes like chips of ice. She wore the robes of a master physician decorated with symbols of rank that Theira didn't recognize. "Physician Caltharis," Ravik introduced. "She's been overseeing the king's care since the curse took hold." Confronting the king's curse. Calthar circled Theira with clinical precision. "And Omega, how desperate we've become. Tell me, girl, do you even understand what you're about to face?" "A curse," Theira replied, meeting the physician's cold gaze steadily. "Not just any curse." Calthar moved to a massive door of pure silver inscribed with protective runes that hummed with power. "This is a sole claim cast by someone he trusted. Someone with the power to reach past his alpha defenses and grip his very essence." "Who? If we knew that, we'd have hunted them down already." Calthris placed her hand on the door and the runes flickered. "The curse is feeding on him, draining his life force to fuel itself. Every time we try to break it, it digs deeper. Traditional healing accelerates it. Divine magic makes it spread. We've tried everything except an Omega's touch," Theira said quietly. Calthris laughed, but there was no humor in it. "What makes you think your weak blood could succeed where alpha healers have failed?" "Because I'm already broken," Theira answered honestly. "The curse," Calder's voice trailed off as the door creaked open, revealing a chamber bathed in dim light. Theira stepped forward, the vial from Esmia warm in her palm. As she approached the king's bedside, his labored breathing filled the air. She uncorked the vial, the silvery liquid swirling, and pressed it to his forehead. Her marks flared, absorbing the curse's dark tendrils. But with each pulse, she felt it seeping into her, binding their souls. The king's eyes fluttered open, violet like Ravik's, locking with hers. "You've claimed me," he whispered. Theira staggered back, the weight of the bond crashing over her. The curse was hers now, a living chain. As Calthar and Ravik rushed forward, the chamber fell silent, the fate of the pack hanging in the balance. Will Theira survive this cursed bond? Vote below, salvation or doom. In the heart of the Crystal Palace, where ancient magic hums through silver doors, Theira's journey takes a darker turn. Her cursed gift, once a chain forged by her family's betrayal, now pulses with a purpose she cannot yet grasp. The Alpha King Thion lies dying, bound by a soul claim cast by a trusted hand. This is Chapter 2 of Theira's tale, where healing becomes a battle and the line between life and death blurs. Let us step into the antechamber, where her fate awaits. The hallway opened into an antechamber where a woman waited. Beautiful in a sharp way, with silver hair despite her apparent youth and eyes like chips of ice. She wore the robes of a master physician decorated with symbols of rank that Theira didn't recognize. Physician Calthris, Ravik introduced. She's been overseeing the king's care since the curse took hold. Calthur circled Theira with clinical precision. And Omega, how desperate we've become. Tell me, girl, do you even understand what you're about to face? A curse, Theira replied, meeting the physician's cold gaze steadily. Not just any curse. Calthur moved to a massive door of pure silver inscribed with protective runes that hummed with power. This is a soul claim cast by someone he trusted. Someone with the power to reach past his alpha defenses and grip his very essence. Who? If we knew that, we'd have hunted them down already. Calthris placed her hand on the door and the runes flickered. The curse is feeding on him, draining his life force to fuel itself. Every time we try to break it, it digs deeper. Traditional healing accelerates it. Divine magic makes it spread. We've tried everything except an Omega's touch, Theira said quietly. Calthris laughed, but there was no humor in it. What makes you think your weak blood could succeed where alpha healers have failed? Because I'm already broken, Theira answered honestly. The curse. Calder's voice trailed off as the door creaked open, revealing a chamber bathed in dim light. The air grew heavy, thick with the scent of despair. Theira stepped forward, her bare feet cold against the stone, the vial from Esmia warm in her palm. The runes pulsed faintly, as if wary of her presence. Ravik lingered behind, his violet eyes watchful, while Calthris stood rigid, her icy gaze never leaving Theira's form. The door swung wide, and the king's labored breathing filled the silence. Was this the moment her marks would claim their purpose, or her doom? The king's chamber. The chamber was a cavern of shadows, its walls lined with cracked crystals that cast a sickly green glow. King Thion lay on a stone slab, his once mighty frame reduced to a husk. His chest rose and fell unevenly, each breath a struggle against the curse that coiled within him. Theira approached, her silver marks flaring as if drawn to his pain. Be careful, Calthris warned, her voice a sharp edge. The curse fights back. Theira nodded, uncorking the vial. The silvery liquid swirled, alive with an energy that mirrored her own. She pressed it to his forehead, and the room seemed to hold its breath. Her marks glowed brighter, tendrils of darkness rising from the king's skin to meet hers. The curse flowed into her, a cold fire that seared through her veins. Theon's eyes fluttered open, violet like Ravik's, locking with hers. You've claimed me, he whispered, his voice a thread of sound. Theira staggered back, the weight of the bond crashing over her. It wasn't just healing, it was a connection, a merging of their souls. Her marks pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, and she felt his pain, his fear, his fading strength. Calthris gasped, stepping forward, but Ravik held up a hand, silencing her. Fascinating, he murmured, scribbling in his journal. Theira clutched the slab, her knees weak. The curse was hers now, a living chain that bound her to the king. But at what cost? Her vision blurred, the chamber spinning as the bond deepened. What's your theory on this soul claim? Comment below, and let's keep the story alive. The bond's burden. The bond was no mere magic. It was a tether, pulling Theira into Theon's essence. She saw flashes of his life. Battles won, betrayals endured, the moment a trusted advisor's hand cast this curse. Her marks shifted, the silver veins darkening to a gold-black hue, pulsing with a power she didn't understand. Theon's hand twitched, reaching for her, and she felt an urge to pull away, yet she couldn't. You've taken it, Calthris said, her tone a mix of awe and accusation. The curse lives in you now. Ravik circled them, his notes relentless. A synthesis, he mused. An omega and an alpha bound by death and life. Theira's breath hitched as she felt the curse settle, no longer devouring the king, but simmering within her. Her body ached, her scars burning as if etched anew. She touched her arm, the patterns glowing brighter, and realized they were changing. Life marks, yes, but now tied to Theon's survival. The chamber grew still, the runes on the door dimming as if the curse's power had shifted. But the weight was unbearable. She sank to her knees, the king's hand still in hers, his strength slowly returning. "You've saved me," he rasped. "But at what price?" Theira had no answer. The bond was a double-edged sword. Her gift had healed him, but it had claimed her too. Calthris approached, her icy eyes narrowing. "This changes nothing," she said. "The court will demand proof of your success." Ravik's voice cut through the tension. "Proof will come, but first we must contain this bond. The pact cannot know yet. Containment and resolve." "Contain it?" Thyra's mind reeled as Ravik and Calthris conferred in hushed tones. Theon's grip tightened, his strength returning with each pulse of her marks. "They'll use you," he whispered, his voice gaining clarity. "The court sees only power, not people." Theira nodded, the bond revealing his memories of political intrigue and betrayal. She stood, her white shift clinging to her sweat-soaked skin, and faced the physician. "I'll prove it," she said, her voice steady despite the exhaustion. Calthris handed her a crystal, its surface cracked but glowing faintly. "Channel the curse into this," she instructed. "If it holds, the king lives. If it shatters," she left the threat unspoken. Theira pressed the crystal to her marks, and the gold-black veins flared. The curse resisted, a cold fire surging through her, but she focused on the vial's energy, on Esmia's words. "To heal is to claim is to surrender." The crystal pulsed, absorbing the darkness, stabilizing the bond. Theon sat up, his violet eyes clear, but the connection remained. Her marks dimmed, the curse contained but not gone. Ravik nodded, satisfied. "You've bought time," he said, "but the court will test you further." Theira helped Theon to his feet, their hands still linked. The chamber door opened, revealing guards with silver masks, their presence a silent threat. She felt the pack's eyes on her, the Omega who had defied fate. As they left the chamber, Theon leaned close. "We're bound now," he said. "Whatever comes, we face it together." Theira met his gaze, resolve hardening. The curse was hers to bear, but so was the chance to redefine what it meant to be Omega. The palace loomed ahead, its spires a promise and a warning. Has Theira mastered the curse, or will it master her? The Crystal Palace stands as a monument to power and peril, its spires piercing the heavens where ancient magic lingers like a forgotten whisper. In Chapter 2, Theira, the cursed Omega healer, bound her soul to Alpha King Nion, absorbing a curse that threatened to consume him. Her silver marks turned gold-black, a testament to their shared fate. But the journey is far from over. As the palace awakens to her presence, the court demands proof of her power and her worth. This is Chapter 3, where the marked Omega rises or falls under the weight of a pack's judgment. Step with me into the shadowed halls, where every step echoes with destiny. The court summons. Theira and Nion emerged from the chamber, their hands still linked by an invisible thread. The silver-masked guards flanked them, their armor clinking with each step, the sound a cold reminder of their captivity. The corridors of the Crystal Palace stretched endlessly, their walls pulsing with that eerie white light, casting long shadows that seemed to watch her every move. The air grew colder, biting at her bare legs beneath the thin white shift, and she shivered, though not from the chill alone. Ravik led the way, his violet eyes scanning the shadows, while Calthris followed, her silver hair glinting like a blade. Theon's strength was returning, his grip firming, but his breath remained shallow, a sign the curse lingered within her. "They'll test you," he murmured, his voice a low rumble. "The court doesn't trust Omegas or miracles." Theira nodded, her marks pulsing faintly, a rhythm that matched his heartbeat. They ascended a spiral staircase, the stone worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, until they reached a grand hall. The double doors swung open, revealing a cavernous room lined with towering pillars. At its center sat a semicircle of figures, their robes adorned with runes, their faces obscured by silver masks like the guards. The court of the Valdris line, alphas and betas united in judgment. A figure rose, his voice booming. "Omega Theira, you stand accused of wielding forbidden magic. Prove your claim on our king, or face exile, or worse." Thyra's stomach tightened. She felt the weight of their stares, the unspoken disdain for her low birth. Ravik stepped forward. "She has stabilized the king's condition," he said, his tone neutral. "The curse is contained within her." A murmur rippled through the court. Another figure, a beta with a scarred throat, leaned forward. "Contained? Or transferred? We need evidence, Commander. Bring the crystal." Calthris produced the cracked crystal, its glow faint but steady. Theira's marks flared as she took it, the curse stirring within her. She channeled it into the crystal, the gold-black veins pulsing, and the room fell silent as the light intensified. But the beta scoffed. "A trick. We need a true test." A new voice cut through the tension. "Let her face me, a healer of the old blood. If she fails, her claim dies here." The healer's challenge. The court parted, revealing a woman in deep green robes, her hair a cascade of midnight black, her eyes burning with a fierce intensity. This was Lyrian, a healer of the old blood, a beta renowned for her mastery of traditional magic. She carried a staff topped with a blackened crystal, its surface etched with runes that seemed to writhe. "I've healed alphas before," Lyrian said, her voice smooth as silk but edged with steel. "Let's see if this Omega's curse can match my skill." Theon tensed beside Theira, his hand squeezing hers. "She's dangerous," he whispered. "Her family has long coveted the throne." Theira met Lyrian's gaze, her own resolve hardening. The court arranged a dais, placing a wounded guard, a beta with a gash across his chest, between them. "Heal him," the scarred beta commanded. "The first to succeed proves their worth." Lyrian moved first, her staff glowing as she chanted, the wound knitting slowly, but the guard's face twisted in pain, the curse's residue resisting her magic. Theira stepped forward, her marks flaring. She touched the guard's shoulder, the gold-black veins pulsing, and the wound closed seamlessly, a faint silver scar remaining. The court gasped, but Lyrian sneered. "A parlor trick. Watch this." She raised her staff, unleashing a burst of light that forced the guard to his knees, the scar reopening. Theira felt the curse stir, a cold fire urging her to act. She pressed the vial to the guard's forehead, its silvery liquid merging with her marks. The scar healed fully, and the guard stood, bowing to her. Lyrian's face darkened. "You've tainted him with your curse," she accused. The court erupted in debate, some calling for Theira's banishment, others intrigued by her power. Theon rose, his voice commanding silence. "She saved him where you failed," he said to Lyrian. "The test is hers." But Lyrian's eyes narrowed. "Then let's see her face the king's full strength. Unleash the curse again." Call to action. At the halfway mark, what challenges await Theira? Share your predictions below and keep watching. Unleashing the curse. The court fell silent, the air thick with anticipation. Lyrian's challenge hung like a storm cloud, her staff glowing with renewed intent. Theon gripped Theira's hand, his strength a lifeline as the guards dragged the dais away, leaving the center of the hall bare. "If you unleash the curse," Calthris warned, "it could kill him or her." Lyrian smiled thinly. "Then we'll know the truth." Theira's heart pounded, her marks burning as she felt the curse stir within her, a wild energy begging for release. Theon nodded, his violet eyes steady. "Do it," he said. "We face it together." Lyrian raised her staff, chanting in a tongue that echoed with ancient power. The crystal atop it darkened, and a wave of shadow erupted, slamming into Theon. He staggered, his breath hitching, and Theira felt it, the curse breaking free, surging through their bond. Her marks flared gold-black, the veins spreading up her arms, across her chest. She cried out, the pain searing, but she held firm, channeling the vial's energy. The shadow coalesced, a writhing mass above them, and the court recoiled. "Contain it!" Ravik shouted, but Theira was already moving. She raised her hands, the crystal from the chamber glowing in her grip, and drew the curse into it. The hall trembled, pillars cracking, as the shadow fought her. Her vision blurred, memories flooding. Her family's betrayal, Esmia's cryptic words, Theon's trust. The bond pulsed, and she felt his strength bolstering hers. The crystal shattered, but the curse stabilized, sinking back into her marks, now a deep, shimmering black. Theon stood tall, his own arms marked with matching veins. The court stared, stunned. Lyrian's staff fell silent, her face pale. "Impossible," she whispered. The scarred beta stepped forward. "She's bound the king's life to hers. This is no victory, it's a weakness." Cliffhanger. A horn sounded, echoing through the palace. "The northern packs approach," a guard announced. "They demand the Omega's head." The pack's verdict. The hall buzzed with tension as the horn's echo faded, replaced by the distant howl of approaching wolves. Theira's breath came in ragged gasps, her marks still shimmering from the curse's containment. Theon pulled her close, his presence a shield against the court's growing hostility. "They've come for you," he murmured. "The northern packs see your power as a threat." Ravik turned to the guards. Prepare the defenses. The court will decide her fate. The scarred beta raised a hand. She's bound our king, risking his life with her omega weakness. I move for her exile, or execution. Voices rose, some in agreement, others hesitant. Calthris stepped forward, her icy gaze fixed on Theira. The bond has stabilized him, she said. But the Pax won't care. They'll see only an omega defying their order. Theira straightened, her exhaustion giving way to defiance. I didn't ask for this bond, she said, her voice carrying across the hall. But I'll protect it, and him, with everything I have. Theon nodded, his voice booming. She's proven her worth. Any who challenge her challenge me. The court fell silent, but the doors burst open, revealing a delegation of northern alphas, their fur matted with travel, their eyes burning with rage. Their leader, a towering figure with a scarred muzzle, pointed at Theira. The Omega has tainted our king with cursed blood. We demand her death. Theira felt the curse stir again, a cold fire ready to defend. She stepped forward, the vial empty but her marks glowing. I am no taint, she declared. I am the reason he lives. Face me and see the power of an Omega. The Alpha snarled, shifting to his wolf form, and the hall erupted into chaos. Guards clashed with the intruders, Theon drew his sword, and Theira raised her hands, the curse flaring to shield them. The battle raged, her marks pulsing with each strike, until the Alpha fell, wounded but alive. The northern delegation retreated, vowing revenge. As the dust settled, Theon turned to her, his eyes soft. You've changed everything, he said. The court watched, divided. The scarred beta scowled, but Calthris nodded faintly. Theira stood tall, the marked Omega, her journey only beginning. Closing. Has Theira secured her place, or will the Pax return? Vote below, acceptance or war. In the shadowed halls of the Crystal Palace, where curses once coiled like venomous vines, Theira's journey reaches its crescendo. Chapter 3 saw her rise as the marked Omega, defeating rivals in the Healer's Challenge and repelling the Northern Pax invasion. But true power demands more than victory. It requires surrender. In Chapter 4, the bond between Theira and King Theon faces its greatest trials, from creeping darkness to battles that could shatter their world. Bonds will be tested, hierarchies will crumble, and a new era will dawn. Join me for this epic conclusion, where curses become gifts and love conquers all. Act 1. Echoes of the Bond, 4 to 2200 hours. Narrator. The throne room still echoed with the whispers of disbelief as Theira stood before the nobles, her gold-black marks glowing like living flames. Impossible, someone breathed, their voice a mix of awe and fear. What are you? Lord Aldrich demanded, scrambling to his feet, his face a mask of outrage and humiliation. Theira's voice carried across the silent room, steady and unyielding. I am Theira, she declared, Omega, healer, and keeper of the king's curse. She raised her marked arms, the intricate patterns shifting like shadows in the light. I took His Majesty's curse into myself because I could survive what alpha healers could not. Not because I'm powerful, but because I've been surviving being poisoned from within my entire life. The nobles murmured, some shifting uncomfortably, others staring in open wonder. She moved closer to where Theon stood, his presence a steady anchor through their bond. Lord Aldrich is right, she continued, her words cutting through the tension. I am an abomination. I'm something that shouldn't exist, but I do exist. And as long as I do, the king lives free of his curse. Aldrich's eyes narrowed, his voice dripping with venom. Prove it. Theira glanced at Theon, seeking his permission. He nodded once, his amber eyes filled with trust. She reached out and touched his hand. The moment their skin connected, the throne room erupted in light. Their bond became visible, threads of gold and shadow weaving through the air like a living tapestry. Everyone could see it. The curse contained within her marks, held in check by her will alone. Gasps filled the room as the light danced, illuminating faces twisted in shock and reverence. She released his hand, and the light faded, leaving the nobles in stunned silence. Several had fallen to their knees, their silver masks glinting in the dim light. Does anyone else question my decision? Theon's voice boomed, laced with alpha dominance. Silence answered him. Good. Court is dismissed. As the nobles scattered like leaves in a storm, Theon turned to Theira, his expression softening. You shouldn't have come, he said, though his tone held no rebuke. You needed me, she replied simply, feeling the warmth of their connection pulse between them. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, recognition, and something deeper that made her heart race. He took her arm gently, leading her from the room. Through the bond, she felt his gratitude, his protectiveness, and a budding emotion that both thrilled and terrified her. Cliffhanger. But as they walked the amberlit corridors of the royal wing, Theira wondered if the real challenge was not the court, but the growing intimacy of their shared souls. Act 2. Shadows of Doubt. 22:00-45:00. Narrator. The days following the throne room confrontation settled into an unexpected rhythm. Theira spent her mornings in the workshop, a sanctuary of ancient texts and rare herbs that still felt like a dream. The books were bound in leather older than the palace itself, their pages whispering secrets in languages she was learning to decipher. The herbs filled the air with scents of earth and magic, moonbloom petals that glowed faintly, shadowroot that cooled the skin on touch. Everything here was worth more than her family's entire village, yet it was hers to explore. Her marks had stabilized into intricate patterns that seemed to tell a story she couldn't quite read yet, shifting subtly when she concentrated. Lyra, the young fox shifter with auburn hair and bright green eyes, had become a constant companion. Her cheerful chatter filled the silence Theira had lived with for so long, a balm to her isolated soul. "You're getting famous," Lyra announced one afternoon, bursting into the workshop with a tray of letters. Marriage proposals from minor lords, requests for healing, 3 death threats, though those are poorly spelled, and an invitation to tea from Duchess Moravia. Theira looked up from the herb mixture she was preparing, a blend for calming restless spirits. "Death threats?" she echoed, a chill running through her despite the warm room. "Oh, those are normal," Lyra waved a hand dismissively. "Anyone who gets close to the king receives them. I'll have them investigated, of course." She sorted through the papers with practiced efficiency, her fox-like agility making the task seem like a game. The marriage proposals are more interesting. Lord Garrett offers 300 acres and 40 horses for your hand. "I'm not cattle to be bought," Theira said sharply, her marks pulsing faintly with irritation. "No, but you're an unmated Omega with unprecedented power. That makes you the most eligible woman in the kingdom, whether you like it or not." Through her connection with Ion, Theira felt a spike of irritation, not hers, but his. He was in a council meeting, yet somehow aware of her distress. The sensation was becoming familiar, this constant awareness of each other, like sharing a heartbeat across distance. That evening, Calthris arrived for what had become a daily examination. The physician's initial coldness had gradually thawed into professional curiosity, though she still maintained careful boundaries. "Your marks are evolving," she noted, studying the patterns through a magnifying crystal that hummed with faint energy. "They're becoming more complex, almost like they're writing themselves into existence." "What do you mean?" Theira asked, rolling up her sleeve to reveal the gold black-silver swirls. Calthris pulled out a journal filled with sketches, her silver hair catching the light. "I've been documenting the changes. Look, this was 3 days ago." She showed a drawing of Thyra's arm, the pattern simpler. "And this is today. See how they've shifted? They're telling a story, perhaps even a prophecy." "About what?" Theira pressed, a mix of fascination and unease stirring within her. "I'm not certain yet, but I've sent word to the archive. There are scholars who specialize in the old languages. They might be able to translate." Calthris paused, then added more gently. "How are you feeling? Any pain?" "No pain, just awareness. I can feel the curse still contained but active. Like holding a wild animal that's chosen not to bite. And your connection to the king." Theira hesitated. The connection had grown stronger each day, evolving from simple awareness to something more complex. She could feel his emotions, yes, but also glimpses of his thoughts, his memories. Sometimes she woke with the taste of his dreams on her tongue. "It's deepening," she admitted. Calthris made a note in her journal. "That's to be expected. The curse created a soul bond, however unintentionally. Such bonds typically strengthen over time until..." She trailed off, her icy eyes meeting Thyra's. "Until what?" "Until the bonded pair either accepts it fully or it tears them apart." The physician's expression was unusually sympathetic. There's no middle ground with soul bonds. They demand complete surrender or complete severance. That night, unable to sleep, Theira wandered the royal wing. She found herself in a gallery she hadn't explored before, lined with portraits of previous queens. All alphas or high-ranking betas, radiating power and authority. She looked nothing like them, her reflection in a nearby mirror showing a woman marked by curses and change. You don't have to be like them, Theon's voice came from behind her. She turned to find him dressed casually in simple clothes rather than his usual royal attire. He looked younger this way, less like a king and more like a man burdened by destiny. Couldn't sleep either? She asked. I felt your restlessness. He moved to stand beside her, studying the portraits with a distant gaze. My mother's portrait should be here, but my father had it removed. Couldn't bear the shame of an Omega queen even after her death. You mentioned she was Omega. How did they meet? She was a healer, actually. Came to treat my father's war wounds. He fell in love with her despite every law saying he shouldn't. Kept her hidden for years. Pretended she was Beta when she became pregnant. His jaw tightened, the pain of old memories surfacing through their bond. The stress of maintaining that lie killed her. She died when I was 7. I'm sorry. She would have liked you, he said softly. Someone who refuses to let others define their worth. They stood in comfortable silence until Theira ventured. Omegas have won, even if it's small. She could see the truth in people. One touch, and she knew their real nature, their deepest secrets. It's why my father both loved and feared her. He turned to face her. What's yours beyond the healing? I don't know anymore. The marks changed everything. I feel like I'm becoming something new every day. Show me. She held out her hand, palm up. After a moment's hesitation, he placed his hand over hers. The connection flared to life, but this time she controlled it, channeling it into something visible. Golden threads of light wound around their joined hands. And for a moment, she saw what he saw, herself glowing with power that had nothing to do with the curse and everything to do with her own evolution. Beautiful, he breathed, and through their connection, she felt he meant more than just the light show. Call to action. We're at the emotional core. What do you think Theira's true gift is? Comment below and stay tuned for the trials ahead. Act 3. Trials of the Heart, 45:00-67:00. Narrator. 3 weeks passed before the first real test came. Theira was in the palace's lower hospital, working alongside the regular healers. Despite Calthrus's initial protests, she'd insisted on using her abilities to help others. The common people, unlike the nobles, didn't care that she was Omega. They cared that she could heal injuries that had resisted all other treatment. She was treating a young boy's infected wound when she felt it, a disturbance in her connection with Theon. Not pain, but something wrong. Darkness creeping at the edges. Stay here, she told the boy's mother, then ran. She found him in his study, collapsed over his desk. Black veins were spreading from his chest, not as severe as before, but unmistakably the curse reasserting itself. No, she breathed, dropping to her knees beside him. This isn't possible. His eyes opened, holding flecks of that terrible darkness. It's fighting back, he gasped. The curse, it's trying to return. Calthrus burst through the door, summoned by the guards. She took one look and paled. The bond is weakening. The curse senses it. That's impossible. I haven't done anything to weaken it. You've been distancing yourself emotionally, Calthrus interrupted. I've observed it. You maintain physical proximity, but emotional barriers. The curse exploits any weakness in the bond. Theira placed her hands on Theon's chest, pouring her power into him. The marks on her skin blazed, and slowly, painfully, the black veins retreated. But she could feel the effort it took, much more than it should have. This is temporary, Calthrus said bluntly. The curse will keep trying to return unless the bond is stabilized. How? Theon asked, his voice rough. You know how. The physician's expression was grave. Soul bonds require complete acceptance. No barriers, no hesitation. You're both holding back, and it's killing the connection. That night, Theon came to Theira's rooms. She was on her balcony watching the stars when she felt him approach. We need to talk, he said. I know. He stood beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. I've been keeping my distance, trying to give you space, not wanting to pressure you. But today proved that's not possible. The bond demands more. It demands everything. He turned to face her. Theira, I need to know, is this just obligation for you? The bond, staying here, helping me? Because if it is, we need to find another solution. She was quiet for a long moment, wrestling with truths she'd been avoiding. At first, yes, it was obligation. I was sold to save you, bound by a curse neither of us chose. But now I wake up reaching for your thoughts. I feel incomplete when you're too far away. When you hurt today, it felt like my own heart was being torn out. She met his eyes. I've been keeping walls up because I'm terrified. Not of you, but of wanting something I've never been allowed to have. What? To be chosen. Not because I'm useful or because there's no other option, but because someone actually wants me. Theira moved closer, his hands gently cupping her face. Then let me be clear. I don't want you because of the bond. I don't need you just because of the curse. I choose you because when you walked into that darkness to save a stranger, you showed more courage than any warrior I've known. Because you see me as Theira, not just the Alpha King. Because your presence makes every room brighter, every burden lighter. Theira, I'm falling in love with you, he said simply. Not the bond, not gratitude. Love. Real, complicated, terrifying love. Tears slipped down her cheeks. Through their connection, she felt the truth of his words, the vulnerability it took for him to say them. I think I'm falling too, she whispered. When he kissed her, gentle and questioning, her marks responded with warm golden light. The bond between them strengthened, solidified, became something unbreakable. But as their love blossomed, shadows of opposition gathered. Would their bond withstand the kingdom's final test? Forged in battle and light. The change was immediate and undeniable. Within days of their emotional breakthrough, Theira's marks had evolved again, now incorporating threads of pure silver among the gold and black. More surprisingly, Theira had developed marks of his own, faint golden lines along his arms that matched hers. This is unprecedented, Calthris said during their joint examination. She'd been documenting everything with increasing excitement. The bond is creating reciprocal changes. You're not just connected, you're synchronizing. Is it dangerous? Theira asked, his voice steady but concerned. Unknown, but your vitals are stronger than ever, both of you. She paused, then added carefully. There's something else. The reproductive barriers between Alpha and Omega. In your case, they seem to be dissolving. Theira's breath caught. What do you mean? I mean, the biological impossibilities are becoming possible. The bond is rewriting your fundamental nature. Calthris set down her instruments. I've been corresponding with scholars from the ancient archives. There are legends of this, pairs so perfectly matched that they transcend normal limitations. Synthesis pairs, Lyra's grandmother said from the doorway. The elderly archivist entered, carrying scrolls that looked older than the palace itself. I found references, pairs who could bridge the gap between Alpha and Omega, creating something entirely new. She spread the scrolls on the table, revealing illustrations of pairs with intertwined marks, children who bore traits of both hierarchies, kingdoms transformed by their union. These are myths, Theira said, though his voice held wonder. Myths born from truth, the archivist corrected. Every 1,000 years or so, a pair emerges who can change the fundamental nature of our kind. The last ones founded the Southern Alliance, where alphas and omegas live as equals. What happened to them? Theira asked. They lived long, happy lives and had 7 children. Each one different. Each one proof that the hierarchy isn't fixed. The old woman smiled. But they also faced resistance. Change terrifies those in power. As if summoned by her words, a guard burst in. Your Majesty, urgent news. 3 Alpha Lords from the Northern Territories have arrived. They're demanding an audience about the Omega situation. Theon's expression hardened. They can wait until they've brought an army, the guard interrupted. 500 warriors. They say they're here to liberate you from unnatural influence. The throne room was tense when they entered. 3 Alpha Lords stood in formation. Lord Aldrich had returned, accompanied by Lords Garrett and Thorn. Behind them, visible through the great windows, their army waited in the courtyard. Your Majesty, Aldrich said with a mocking bow. We've come to offer you freedom from this cursed bond. I'm quite free already, Theira replied coldly. Are you? An Omega has marked you. Garrett gestured at the faint golden lines visible on Theon's arms. She's changing you, weakening your alpha nature. This is magical corruption of the highest order. What we have is recognized by ancient law, Theira said. Even you can't challenge a true soul bond. We can if we prove it's corrupted, Thorn spoke for the first time. He was the oldest, scarred from countless battles. A formal challenge has been issued. Trial by combat. If you win, we acknowledge the bond. If you lose. If he loses, I become property of the victor, Theira finished. She'd studied enough law to know how this worked. Exactly. Aldrich smiled cruelly. "And since you've been weakened by her influence, Your Majesty, we've graciously agreed to make it sporting. You may choose a champion to fight in your place." It was a trap. If Theon fought himself, they'd claim any victory was due to Theira's corruption. If he chose a champion who lost, she'd be forfeit. "I'll fight," Theon said. "No," Theira stepped forward. "I invoke the right of response." The room went silent. Calthrus whispered urgently, "That law hasn't been used in 3 centuries. An Omega can't. An Omega who has been formally claimed can fight for their own freedom." The archivist spoke up, her voice carrying surprising authority. "It's old law, but still valid." "This is absurd," Garrett laughed. "An Omega against an Alpha in combat. Not just any Omega," Theira said, her marks beginning to glow. "One who carries the power of a transformed curse. Unless you're afraid." The insult landed perfectly. Garrett's face flushed with rage. "I accept. Tomorrow at dawn, to submission or death." After the lords left, Theon grabbed Theira's shoulders. "You can't do this. Garrett is a veteran warrior. He's killed dozens in formal challenges. And I've survived being poisoned from within since childhood. I've absorbed a curse that killed alpha healers. I think I can handle one prejudiced lord. This isn't a game. No, it's not. It's about proving that Omegas aren't property, that we can defend ourselves, choose our own fate. This is bigger than just us." He pulled her close, and she felt his fear through their connection. "If you die, then you'll be free of the bond, and the curse will return, but I won't die." She looked up at him with fierce determination. "I've survived too much to fall now." Dawn came too quickly. The combat circle had been drawn in the main courtyard, ancient runes marking its boundaries. What seemed like the entire palace had gathered to watch, nobles and servants alike forming a living wall around the circle. The 3 challenging lords stood together, confident in their victory. Lord Garrett was already in the circle, stripped to the waist, his scarred torso testament to his experience. Theira entered from the opposite side, wearing simple fighting clothes that Lyra had found for her. Her marks were hidden beneath long sleeves, though their glow was faintly visible through the fabric. "An Omega in the combat circle," someone whispered. "Blasphemy. The king must be truly bewitched to allow this." Another replied. Theon stood at the circle's edge, his tension visible in every line of his body. Through their bond, she felt his desperate desire to intervene, held back only by his respect for her choice. "Trust me," she sent through their connection. "Always," came his response, though worry colored it. "The rules are simple," Lord Thorn announced. "Combat continues until submission or death. Shifting is permitted. No weapons, no interference." He looked directly at Theon. "From anyone." Garrett grinned, already savoring victory. "Ready to return to your proper place, Omega? On your knees." "The only one kneeling today will be you," Theira replied. Calmly, the bell rang. Garrett moved faster than she expected, crossing the circle in 2 strides. His fist connected with her ribs before she could dodge, sending her rolling across the stone. The crowd gasped, some in sympathy, others in satisfaction. "Pathetic," Garrett laughed. "This will be over in." Theira arose, and her sleeves had torn from the impact. Her marks blazed visible, gold and black and silver, intertwining in patterns that seemed to move. Where he'd struck her, the marks had absorbed the impact, converting kinetic energy into power. "Interesting," she said, spitting blood. "Hit me again." Confused but eager, Garrett obliged. This time, she didn't try to dodge. His fist connected with her stomach, and she felt the curse within her respond, drinking in the violence, transforming it. The marks spread, covering more of her visible skin. "What are you?" Garrett stepped back, uncertainty creeping into his expression. "Something new," she replied. Then she moved. The absorbed energy released in a burst of speed that shouldn't have been possible for an Omega. She struck him once, twice, 3 times before he could react, not with trained technique, but with raw power channeled through her marks. Garrett stumbled back, nose bleeding. With a snarl, he shifted. His wolf was massive, gray and scarred, teeth bared in rage. The crowd pressed back. A shifted alpha in combat was lethal. Theira couldn't shift. She'd never had a wolf. But as Garrett's wolf lunged, she did something else entirely. She caught him. Her hands gripped his throat, marks blazing so bright that people shielded their eyes. The curse's power, fed by months of containing it, surged through her arms, not to harm, but to dominate. "Submit," she commanded, and her voice carried harmonics that bypassed normal hierarchy. The wolf fought, clawing at her arms, drawing blood that glowed gold as it fell. But she held on, pouring power through the contact. She showed him what she truly was, not just an omega, but a bridge between life and death, healing and harm, creation and destruction. Garrett's wolf form shuddered. Then, impossibly, it submitted. An alpha wolf bowing to an omega should have broken natural law. Yet there he was, belly to the ground, whimpering. "Yield," Theira said, releasing him. Garrett shifted back, gasping. I yield." The courtyard erupted. Some shouted about impossibility, others about dark magic, but the combat had been clean, witnessed by hundreds. "The challenge is settled," Thorns said reluctantly. "The bond stands." Aldrich stepped forward, face twisted with rage. "This proves nothing except that she's even more dangerous than we thought." "She must be." "Must be what?" Theon's voice cut through the noise. He entered the circle, moving to stand beside Theira. "Destroyed? Imprisoned for the crime of being stronger than you expected? She's an aberration." "She's the future." Theon took Thyra's hand, their joined marks glowing in harmony. "The world is changing, lords. The rigid hierarchies that have defined us for millennia are crumbling. We can evolve or become extinct." He turned to address the entire crowd. "Let it be known throughout the kingdom. Theira is not just my bonded, but my equal, my partner, my mate in every sense that matters. Any who challenge her challenge the throne itself." "You cannot mate an omega," Garrett protested, struggling to his feet. "I can and I will," Theon replied, "unless anyone else wishes to challenge either of us." Silence answered him. As the crowd dispersed, Theon pulled Theira aside, examining her injuries with gentle hands. "You're hurt." "I'm healing," she corrected, watching the cuts close under the influence of her marks. "The curse's power, I'm learning to channel it." "You were magnificent," he said softly. "Terrifying, but magnificent. I had good motivation." She leaned into him, suddenly exhausted. "I couldn't let them take me from you." "Never," he agreed, pressing his lips to her forehead. "We're bound, remember? In soul and now in choice." 1 year later, the throne room had been transformed for the ceremony. Where once only the highest nobles would have stood, now beings of every rank filled the space. Omegas stood beside alphas, betas mingled freely, and the rigid formations of old had given way to something more organic, more alive. Theira stood before the great window, wearing a gown that incorporated her marks into its design. Gold and black and silver threads that seemed to capture light itself. Her hands rested on the subtle swell of her stomach, where the impossible had become reality. "Nervous?" Lyra asked, making final adjustments to the crown of silver flowers in Theira's hair. "Terrified," Theira admitted. "Not about the wedding. We've been bonded so long that feels like formality. But this." She touched her stomach again. Caltharus, now a close friend rather than just physician, smiled warmly. "The children are healthy. Both of them twins." Theira still marveled at the word. One presenting markers for alpha, one for omega, but both carrying aspects of each. "You were right. We're becoming something new." "The first of many," the archivist added from her chair. She'd become a permanent fixture in their lives, documenting everything. Across the kingdom, others are manifesting similar changes. The rigid hierarchy is dissolving, replaced by something more fluid. "Not everyone's happy about it," Lyra pointed out. "There are still resistors." "Change is never easy," Theira agreed, "but it's necessary." The music began, not the traditional royal march, but something new composed for this unprecedented union. Theira made her way through the palace, and everywhere she looked, she saw evidence of transformation. Guards who were Omega and Beta alongside Alpha, servants who walked with dignity rather than fear, noble families that included all designations. When she entered the throne room, her breath caught. Theon stood at the altar, magnificent in royal blue and silver, but his eyes held only warmth, only love. Their bond hummed with contentment. Two souls that had found their perfect match. "You're radiant," he said when she reached him, "for spin-off stories in this world," not caring that the entire kingdom could hear. "You're biased," she replied but smiled. The ceremony itself blended old traditions with new understanding. They exchanged vows that spoke not of dominance and submission, but of partnership and choice. When they kissed, their marks blazed in perfect harmony, and several people swore they saw wings of light spread from their joined forms. Later at the reception held in the gardens, Theira found a moment of quiet. She stood among the impossible flowers that had grown from her touch. Roses that bloomed in rainbow colors, herbs that carried moonlight in their leaves. "My lady," a young voice said. She turned to find a girl, perhaps 12, with the telltale signs of being Omega, but carrying herself with unusual confidence. "Yes, I just wanted to thank you," the girl said. "My parents were going to sell me to pay debts, but after what you did, after proving Omegas could be strong, they changed their minds. They're letting me train as a healer instead." Theira knelt, bringing herself to the girl's eye level. "You were always strong. I just reminded everyone else to notice." The girl's eyes shone with tears and hope before she scurried away. "Changing lives already?" Theon's voice came from behind her. "We both are." She leaned back against him, his arms encircling her and their unborn children. "Your mother would be so proud." "She would be proud of you," he corrected. "An Omega who transformed a curse into a gift, who defeated an Alpha in combat, who carries children that will bridge our divided world." "We did it together," she reminded him. "The bond is just the beginning." He turned her to face him. "We have a lifetime to discover what else we can become." As the sun set over the Crystal Palace, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Theira reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a rejected Omega sold to save a dying king to a queen who'd helped reshape their entire world. The curse that had threatened to destroy them had become the catalyst for transformation. The bond forced upon them had become the greatest gift. And the love that shouldn't have been possible had become the foundation for a new age. In the gardens below, she could hear music and laughter, Alphas and Omegas dancing together, barriers dissolving, fear replaced by hope. It wouldn't be easy. Change never was. There would be resistance, setbacks, moments of doubt. But as Theon's hand found hers, their marks glowing with that familiar warmth, she knew they would face it all together. "No regrets?" he asked softly. "None," she replied and meant it. "Everything that seemed like a curse led me to you, and everything that seemed impossible became reality." Above them, the first stars appeared, blessing the union that had transformed not just two souls, but an entire kingdom's understanding of what was possible when love transcended law, when connection conquered curse, and when the lowest became the most precious of all. In the years that would follow, their story would be told throughout the lands, not as a fairy tale, but as proof that sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as the greatest curses. Their children would grow up in a world where designation didn't determine destiny, where strength came in many forms, and where an Omega could stand as equal to an Alpha. But tonight, in this moment, they were simply Theira and Theon, two souls who had found each other against all odds, whose love had rewritten the very laws of nature. And that, they knew, was the greatest transformation of all. And so ends Theira's journey, from deepest wounds to ultimate healing. What was your favorite chapter? Vote below and subscribe.